In 1978, pilot Barry is mid-flight when someone boards the plane. With his coworker fast asleep, Barry turns off the autopilot and causes turbulence to jolt everyone awake. He then calmly re-engages the autopilot and pretends it was just a bumpy patch in the skies. When Barry gets home, his wife Lucy is waiting in seductive attire, hoping for a romantic evening, but Barry instantly passes out on the bed. During a layover at a bar between flights, Barry meets Monty, a man who knows about his secret side hustle, smuggling cigars for extra income. Monty turns out to be a CIA agent who's impressed with Barry's flying background and offers him a chance to serve his country. Monty takes Barry to a hidden airstrip and introduces him to a high-speed aircraft he'll get to fly if he takes the job. The mission? Aerial surveillance across Central America. The catch? He can't tell anyone, not even his wife. Though uneasy about the secrecy, Barry agrees. Monty allows Barry to test the aircraft, and he performs impressive aerial stunts with ease, clearly enjoying flying like this again. That night at home, Barry tells Lucy he's quitting commercial flying to work for a private company called Independent Aviation Consultants, which is really just the CIA's cover. Lucy suspects something shady and argues that it sounds like scam. Barry briefly doubts himself, but the next day during a regular flight, he grows restless and simply walks away from it. He soon resigns and begins his covert missions with Monty. Due to Cold War tensions, the Soviets are helping communist rebels in Central America, and the CIA wants aerial images of their movements. Barry flies low over several countries to snap detailed photographs, often dodging gunfire from below. Thanks to his expert flying, he always escapes unharmed and finds the danger exhilarating. His intel is so valuable that Monty constantly receives praise back at CIA headquarters. One day, a bullet actually damages the aircraft mid-flight, but Barry quickly adjusts the controls and regains stability just in time. This new role gives Barry more time at home, and he finally satisfies Lucy. They even expand their family. Still, Barry hides the truth about his job and wears his old pilot uniform whenever he's home. A major issue is the low pay. Though Monty often flatters him, Barry pushes for a raise, but Monty insists he be patient. Eventually, Barry gets a new task, which he nicknames Bagman. It involves stopping in Panama to exchange intel packages with Colonel Noriega, who's collaborating with the CIA. On one trip, Barry stops in Colombia for fuel, but armed men suddenly seize him and take him to a remote estate. He's brought before infamous drug lord Pablo Escobar, who immediately sees through Barry's businessman facade. Pablo gives him a tour of his cocaine operation and offers him a fortune to smuggle the product. Barry considers it, but notices a crashed aircraft among the trees. Pilot casualties caused by a runway too short for takeoff. Pablo refuses to extend it, fearing exposure to authorities, and says Barry can back out if he can't handle it. Barry, feeling his skills challenged, accepts the job as is. Pablo instructs him to deliver in Miami, but Barry objects due to the risks and suggests Louisiana instead. He proposes using a hatch in the plane to drop the cargo midair for pickup. Barry trains the workers to properly wrap the packages for the drop and warns them not to overload the aircraft. Even if there's space, too much weight could keep him grounded. When he boards, he finds someone sitting in the cockpit. The workers insist a guard accompanies the load, but Barry declines again, emphasizing the weight issue. Before takeoff, they hand him a small cross for protection, which he hangs on the dashboard. As the overloaded plane struggles down the rough runway, Pablo and his crew bet on whether Barry will make it. The aircraft barely clears the trees, but finally lifts off and Barry kisses the cross in relief. In U.S. airspace, military radar locks onto him, but Barry navigates around oil platforms, tricking them into thinking he's just another company helicopter. Upon reaching Louisiana, Barry switches on autopilot, opens the hatch, and successfully drops the cargo to awaiting men below. He later celebrates with Pablo, who rewards him with a bag stuffed with cash and begins planning the next job. Suddenly, gunfire erupts as soldiers storm the compound. Barry panics, but Pablo calmly leaves the room with his men, telling Barry to stay put. Terrified, Barry sees a police helicopter and grabs his money to escape, only to stumble into a chaotic shootout. A soldier catches him, while others surround Pablo's crew in the main lobby. A few days later, Pablo and his men are released, but Barry remains in custody, bruised and missing a tooth. Monty visits him and explains that authorities now know about Barry's smuggling. A search of his house is scheduled for the next day. Barry begs Monty for help to protect his family. Monty agrees, but in return, Barry must deliver weapons to rebels in Nicaragua as part of the new administration's war plans. With no other options, Barry agrees. He's soon released, but Monty admits he couldn't cancel the search warrant. To safeguard his loved ones, Barry relocates to a CIA-arranged safe house in Arkansas. He returns home at 4 a.m., waking Lucy and urging her to pack immediately. She demands answers, but Barry just pleads for trust. They quickly gather their belongings and leave moments before the police arrive. Upon reaching Arkansas, the family is disheartened by the quiet, run-down town. Their house is deep in the woods and in poor condition. Monty waits nearby, and Barry heads out without offering Lucy any answers, raising her suspicions. At a private airfield, Monty reveals that the entire area, from their home to the runway, is now Barry's property. Monty then shows Barry the weapons he'll be transporting and a map detailing which routes to use in order to avoid military zones. The airspace is tight and risky, but Barry is thrilled at the idea of owning his own airport. He also notices a bag stuffed with cash waiting for him, which convinces him to take the job. When Barry arrives home, Lucy jumps on him in anger, forcing him to confess everything. He throws the money at her feet, assuring her she can now afford anything she wants for their family's future. Even so, Lucy remains anxious. In 1981, Barry completes his first delivery, but rather than being interested in the guns, the locals rob him of his designer clothes and sunglasses. Barry calls Monty to vent his frustration, but Monty reminds him that success depends on delivering the cargo to the right people at the right moment. Barry soon learns that he's not supplying soldiers, but instead trying to arm civilians to become fighters. On his next trip, Barry brings a bat for protection and offers more appealing items first: adult magazines and booze. That's when Pablo and his crew catch up with him, asking Barry to start smuggling for them again. Now that Barry has access to the CIA's secret routes, he's glad to say yes. His routine becomes a cycle. He picks up guns in Arkansas, avoids all military thanks to the map, and lands at Pablo's base. The Colombians take most of the weapons and replace them with their product. Barry then flies it all to the rebel training camp. There, the powder is loaded on a boat headed for Miami. Barry also takes extra product back to the States, making a refueling stop in Panama, where Noriega ensures his safety. The colonel even receives some powder as part of his fee. When Barry returns to Louisiana, he tosses the remaining bags into the swamps, where dealers retrieve them. Barry starts raking in serious cash, and soon the operation becomes too big for one person. He hires a team of 4 men who all have criminal backgrounds and dubs them his snowbirds. They each fly separate routes to maximize income. One day, Monty shows up with major news. The U.S. government wants to bring foreign insurgents to Barry's land for training. Soon, all of Barry's aircraft are flying in people who are eager to escape their struggling lives, clinging to the false hope of the American dream. Every time Barry lands in Latin America, crowds beg him to take them with him. A full training facility is eventually built in Arkansas, and young men begin learning how to handle guns. Barry keeps snapping pictures and continues delivering both guns and powder. Some townsfolk start growing suspicious, but Barry's involvement in local projects keeps them content and quiet. By 1982, Barry drives a new car and has completely remodeled their home. Yet he's earning so much money that he can't deposit it all without raising red flags. To manage the excess, Barry opens a series of fake businesses in town and assigns meaningless jobs to locals. He also invests in new planes for his airport. Lucy begins to enjoy their upgraded lifestyle and joins Barry at Pablo's lavish parties. One night, the couple gets intimate while Barry is piloting mid-flight. Cash keeps flooding in, piling up everywhere in their house. Barry's fix is to bury it in the backyard. Eventually, Lucy's brother JB visits the family and shares that he's out of work. Barry gives him a job as the airport's janitor. As the money continues to grow, they run out of backyard space. One day, the dog accidentally digs up a stash, and JB finds a few bags too. When Barry opens the barn doors, he's buried by an avalanche of money bags. He ends up stashing some of the cash in hay bales. That same afternoon, JB shows up with a brand new car and a girlfriend who looks underage. Lucy instantly removes the girl from the house, and Barry scolds JB for blowing money so carelessly. In 1983, Barry's team is exhausted after a long flight. That night, they're sloppy on their way back, and their planes finally show up on military radar. Fighter jets lock onto them, and Barry realizes there's no way to outrun jets with such advanced speed. So, he instructs his crew to slow down and fly circles over the ocean through the night. Eventually, the jets burn through their fuel and return to base. Meanwhile, the FBI starts noticing that a small Arkansas town is churning out an unusual amount of money. An agent visits and finds too many banks and luxury cars for such a quiet place. At the same time, Border Patrol locates Barry's aircraft and sends their own planes to intercept. This time, they don't send jets, but regular planes that match Barry's speed. Unable to shake them, Barry makes a sudden detour and lands directly on a public road. One car swerves to avoid being hit, and the plane crashes through signs and finally comes to a halt in a tree-filled yard. Without hesitation, Barry grabs his cash, tosses some bills to the homeowners as a bribe, and takes off on a kid's bicycle. Meanwhile, Pablo wages war on the government, and his crew is kicked out of Colombia. They relocate to Nicaragua. As soon as Barry hears, he leaves to meet them, giving JB the perfect chance to steal a bag of money and head into town. The sheriff spots him and instantly starts pursuing him down the street to make an arrest. Not long after, the FBI agent joins the chase. Lucy quickly contacts Barry to warn him, but he can't leave yet. He has to wrap up a risky new deal with Pablo. Once Barry gets home, he calls JB, who's in jail, and tells him to stay quiet because he'll handle everything. Barry then contacts Pablo, saying they need to pause their operation until he sorts out the JB situation. But Pablo insists he'll take care of it. A few hours later, JB is released. Barry drives him out to a remote road and hands him a large sum of cash along with a passport, telling him to disappear for good. JB, furious, yells at Barry and insults Lucy before getting into his car. Barry steps out to defend Lucy, but freezes as he watches the car explode. JB is clearly dead. Barry drags the wreckage into the woods to cover it up. Sometime later, Monty gets reprimanded by his higher-ups because half the weapons meant for the Nicaraguan rebels ended up with traffickers. Monty goes to see Barry, cancels the entire mission, and sends all the rebels back. He tells Barry to wait for further instructions, but it's obvious the CIA is cutting ties. Back at his office, Monty instructs his men to burn every file connected to Barry. Meanwhile, Barry tells the snowbirds to pack up and run, though they're unsure what to do with all the weapons. That night, the airport is suddenly swarmed by multiple law enforcement agencies, from the FBI to federal officers. Barry is taken into custody and demands his phone call. But when he dials Pablo's number, it turns out to be disconnected. Dozens of officers stand around as Barry speaks with the prosecutor, until a call from the governor interrupts them. Everyone looks on in shock when the prosecutor suddenly declares that Barry is free to go. Once he steps outside, a group of men in suits picks him up and flies him straight to the White House. There, Barry attends a high-level meeting with key military officials desperate to prove that Latin America is behind the drug trade and to capture Pablo. They want Barry to keep smuggling as a double agent and gather evidence against Pablo. Barry agrees to the job. In 1984, the government gives him a new plane and shows him where all the hidden cameras are located. His only task is to take pictures. Barry's nervous that the cameras are too obvious, but backing out now would mean prison. Barry and one of the snowbirds board the new plane and fly through a storm to reach Nicaragua. Upon landing, they're surrounded by angry soldiers and forced to kneel. Pablo's assistant soon arrives and commands his men to shoot, but it's all a prank, and he bursts out laughing. Barry then meets Pablo. Tension hangs in the air at first, but Barry reassures him they're still partners. The deal goes ahead, and Barry manages to take all the required photos. Later, the government airs an official statement claiming victory over smugglers. They broadcast the photos on TV as proof, but fail to blur Barry's face, enraging Lucy. At the same time, Pablo and his crew discover Barry's betrayal. Barry contacts a government official for help, who apologizes for the leak, but reminds Barry he knew the risks. That evening, Barry has one last meal with his family and tells Lucy to wear all her finest jewelry before the feds show up, so they won't be able to confiscate it. Agents soon flood the house, seizing all their valuables. Barry urges Lucy to escape with the kids, but without him for their safety. Lucy refuses and starts removing her jewelry. A distraught Barry calms her and explains that he'll be gone for a while, so she eventually agrees to leave. While Lucy and the kids relocate to her hometown, Barry goes to trial. Though the prosecutor tries to tear him apart, the judge sentences Barry to just 1,000 hours of community service. He walks out as the prosecutor keeps objecting. Aware that Pablo is hunting him, Barry begins switching motels nightly. During this time, he records several videos narrating his story. Every time he starts his car, he warns bystanders to stand back in case of an explosion. Each evening, he checks in at a Salvation Army center to complete his service hours. One night, as Barry parks his car, unidentified men approach and shoot him in the head. The next morning, the police find his body, but the FBI takes over the case to bury the truth. One of the snowbirds is eventually arrested, but he later becomes a pastor in rural Alabama. The rest remain untraceable. Monty is promoted after suggesting the CIA work with Iranians to arm Latin America. The agency keeps using Barry's planes for supply drops, but without knowing how to handle the load, the operation ends after one plane is shot down. Lucy takes a job at a fast food place, but still holds on to some of her expensive jewelry. This is a true story and played a key role in what became known as the Iran-Contra affair. Barry Seal was assassinated in his car on February 19, 1986, at the age of 46.